If I were to come to you and I said, I have this really cool board game and I want you to play it, let me show you. This is a really cool game and I really want you to play it with me. What is one of the first questions you would ask me? You would say, okay, how do I play? What are the instructions? What are the rules? What's the law? Well, to play the game is to know the law. And the laws or the Hermetic principles or the rules, you will, are instructions on how the operating system works, how you're supposed to play the game. And our entire universe is governed by the same law. It is how God works, it is how God moves in and through you as God. And the seven Hermetic principles are not new. They were found in the Emerald Tablets. Emerald Tablets about 36,000 years before Christ ever existed. Written by Tahuti, aka Hermes Trismegistus, or Thought, whatever you want to call it, these are basic principles. And it starts off with the first one, the law of mentalism. This law is extremely important because it states the first thing that you need to know about creation, that all is the mind. The entire universe itself, I added that word in there, is mental. Everything in creation started as a thought. Consciousness is the only thing that has anything, does anything, is anything, or moves anything. There is no creation or movement without thought. And even in John 1:1, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. What is word? Word is thought. Word is consciousness. And one of my favorite metaphysicians, Reverend Ike, says, thought is power. No matter what the nature of that thought, thought is the absolute power. Thought is almighty power. That thought is actually God. Unmask, mask off, mask off. Take the mask off. God is thought, and the law is how thought operates. So you need to understand that first and foremost, that all is the mind. The thought is the only power in existence. And every thought that we think actually carries a charge, and which leads us to the second law, the Hermetic principle, the law of vibration, that nothing rests, everything moves, everything vibrates. This means that your thoughts, your brain waves, they carry a charge, just like light waves and sound waves, but your thoughts hold a specific frequency. So if you have thoughts about love, success, money, and wealth, they're going to hold a specific charge, and they are going to permeate throughout your entire body. They're going to vibrate throughout your entire body. Everything that you think is going to ultimately impact you. And this is where a lot of people talk about the law of attraction, like attracts like, because if you have a thought that is on a certain frequency, it is going to attract more things that are on that same frequency. There was a experiment done on the power of words and the power of vibration of words with Dr. Emoto. There was a water experiment. If this is your fifth time hearing this experiment, listen up again, because I'm going to go through it briefly. If this is your first time hearing about this experiment, I highly encourage you to do some research on it. But I'm going to give y'all a quick cliffhanger summary of what it was. Basically, Dr. Emoto took samples of water and every day spoke different words of affirmation in those waters. And the waters where there were negative words that carried a negative frequency spoken into those waters, as you could see here on this diagram, that words like evil and you fool, that water turned into like mold and fungus, and it started to get cloudy and ugly. But words that carried and had a high resonance and high vibration, like love, thank you, and gratitude, actually formed beautiful shaped crystals. And so this scientific experiment just proves that where attention goes, energy flows, right? Your thoughts actually take up 20% of your body's energy. And this is like a known fact. So the question is what thoughts are you allowing to take up 20% of your body's energy? Is it charging your body or is it draining your body? So this is how we are able to begin to develop our awareness and saying, if I'm thinking about something, how is that thought actually making me feel? How is that thought making me speak? How is that thought ultimately making me act and ultimately become? Because it just leads us to the second law, the law of correspondence. As above, so below, as within, so without, as the universe, so the soul. As the universe, your soul, the soul, your soul is a universe. You are one verse in this harmonic scale of music. The entire universe operates on a harmonic scale of music. You are always corresponding, creating, whether you're aware of it or not. The human mind has over 70,000 thoughts per day, and our subconscious mind never sleeps. So we're always corresponding. This is the song that never ends. It goes on and on, my friend. It really is a never-ending song. And your part, your verse is to tune into and correspond with the God in you. Because what you say to yourself, within yourself, about yourself, to yourself, becomes your reality, cuz. As a man thinks, so is he. Your thoughts ultimately shape your thinking, which ultimately shapes your actions, which ultimately shapes your reality. This is why when we think about prayer, prayer is the art of correspondence. But we have to understand when we're praying that we're asking as if it's something that we don't already have, or it's something outside of us. When we pray, we're supposed to correspond with the affirmation and confirmation and certainty, because all things come through you, not to you. All things are possible through Christ who strengthens me. God is living and breathing within you, and you are corresponding on that particular highway. This is just what it is. This is the law of correspondence. So the question is who or what influences your thinking, your conversation that you're having to yourself, with yourself, about yourself? What words are you allowing yourself to correspond with? Because those words carry a charge, and they're going to end up on one place on this spectrum, which brings us to the fourth Hermetic principle, the law of polarity. Many of our ancestors believed that duality was an illusion, because the only difference when we're talking about polarity and duality lies degree. If we think about temperature, you have low temperature and high temperature, but it is the same. It's the same thermostat. The only difference lies degree. And feelings help you gauge your thermostat, your internal thermostat, because each side of polarity carries a either positive or negative charge. And there are two parts of you. They're connected and they're on the same plane. They're just on opposite ends. This is the law of polarity, the whole story of, God and the devil, where you got an angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. This is why God won't and cannot kill the devil, because we can't cut off lower aspects of ourselves. We need all aspects of ourselves to make us whole. The whole story of God and the devil is a story about one creation, because there is no equal or opposing force or power to God. Even in Isaiah 45:7, it says, I form the light, I create the darkness, I make peace, I create evil, I, the Lord, do all things. So God is basically saying, I'm the one creating the evil. I'm the one creating the darkness. It's me. There's no equal or opposing power to God, the consciousness, the one consciousness that there only is. And it's just like our subconscious mind, right? Where it's impartial. It doesn't discriminate, without prejudice. Your wish is always your command. And whatever you think and focus and feel the most, it is what is going to be granted and given upon unto you. As a man thinks, so is he. So you choose what side you want to think and dwell and live upon. Heaven and hell is your choice. That's why the kingdom of heaven is within you. It's a mindset, and you're constantly going to have to make sure that you are guarding, above all things, guard your heart and your mind. And in other ancient spiritualities, this is the story of Anubis or Shalat. Please forgive me if I'm mispronouncing Shalat, right? But duality itself is an ancient story. Anubis is the god of the underworld, where he weighs the heart, the nature of twilight and dawn, darkness to light, the defender against chaos. He played a crucial role in guiding souls through the process of judgment and ensuring a safe passage to the afterlife. Anubis represents the cycle of life and death and rebirth, which is what polarity represents. It's because you literally have to die to those things. You have to die. That part of your consciousness, that part of you, does have to go on the cross. And the same with Shalat, right? He was depicted as a shapeshifter, symbolizing his connection to transformation and change. He was a deity associated with guiding souls into the afterlife. This is why Anubis and in other religions, you have to keep your heart as light as a feather, to have ma'at, to have balance, to balance the inner polarities within you. This is all a story of being the watchdog of your mind, being the watchdog of your own thoughts, because your thoughts are the only cause. Which leads us to the law of cause and effect. Your effect is your physical reality. You are the cause and the effect of all that you see and experience in your reality. We are not the observer of our reality. We are the cause of our reality. The thoughts that you entertain, the beliefs that you hold, your emotions, they all nurture these unseen forces that are going to eventually shape your world. The law of cause and effect is also known as the law of karma. Karma in Sanskrit means come back. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Every action has a cause, and the cause is thought. Every cause has an effect, and every effect has a cause. Like what you throw out comes back to you like a boomerang. And so once we understand that we're receiving only what we're putting out, the shift begins within you first. The cause of your inner thoughts, of what you're putting out into the universe. Not what the effects are. Because if you take a look at this, follow me for this example right here. You have a seed, right? And you're planting an apple seed in the ground. You would expect, if you planted an apple seed, to eventually, once it grows and sprouts, after how many ever years, right, to have an apple tree. You wouldn't expect to plant an apple seed and get an orange tree. That's not how this works, right? You know, when you plant a specific seed of that thought, of that frequency, of everything that it has within that seed, it is going to become and grow into that thing. This is the law of cause and effect. Energy of is energy back. E = mc squared. And this eventually creates a ripple effect, right? Because you have a feedback, energy of, energy back. It creates a rhythm. All things rise and fall. Just like the cycle of the seasons, right? Everything in nature has a cycle and a season, including you. The pendulum is always going to swing back and forth, maintaining its own rhythm on its own harmonic scale. You have a harmonic scale, you have a circadian rhythm, you have a way of which your habits and your behaviors and your seasons, whether they be good or bad, they maintain a certain frequency. And so the question that we have to constantly ask ourselves is, what frequency are we in tune and in flow with? Is it the one that we want to be dancing to? We gotta answer that question ourselves. The last Hermetic principle is the law of gender. And this one is so funny to me because, it's men do not like, I don't know why they don't like this law, because all things contain masculine and feminine energies, right? Men be like, I ain't got no female in me. You're half your mama, ain't you? Like, what do you mean you don't have your mom's genetic code in you? Come on now. It has nothing to do with sex or gender roles. Gender is fundamental for physical existence, but the law of gender is also fundamental for manifesting as well. Both energies are necessary for creation. Both masculine and feminine energies are necessary for creation. Without both, you do not have creation. It's necessary for balance and harmony in nature. With every seed requires some sort of planting, fertilization, and also gestation period. The law of gender, it is something that we have to understand when we think about the gestation period. What is happening when that seed is in the soil? Oftentimes we are left in the dark, right? But every seed has its own gestation period. Humans, we give birth to things in 9 months. A lizard, 3 to 4 months. Salmon, it's only 40 days, right? And then you think about something as large as a whale, it's 12 to 16 months. So every idea that you have has its own gestation period. And on the 7th day, God rested. So during that gestation period, you're supposed to allow things to grow while they're developing in the soil, while they're developing in the womb. We have to rest. We got to trust it. We got to trust in the divine creator and in the law. And that because this particular law, the law of gender, it belongs to spirit. It's done in the dark, and God's ways are past finding out. What our job with the law of gender is to literally to be still and know that I am. So whatever I am is, whatever I say I am to be, that is what is going to be. So my part is to be still. And a lot of people misconstrue stillness as it's non-action or complacency. That is not what stillness is. Stillness is having faith. And what is faith? Faith is having the substance of things hoped for. And a lot of people also kind of misinterpret that scripture, and they're like, they get to hoping, right? But it says it's the substance of what is hoped for. So what it is that I'm hoping for? Well, I'm hoping for, let's say, a car, right? I have a car, but let's just use this as an example. A newer car, whatever, right? What is this substance meaning? What is the feeling of getting that and having that? That's what faith is. So the substance of having a car is having a car. It's feeling and knowing what that feeling of already having a car is, the feeling of the unseen, feeling and knowing that it is yours, not hoping and longing for it. Because when a woman is pregnant, she ain't hoping and longing for pregnancy, right? She already knows that she's pregnant. It takes a certain level of awareness, it's effort, it's work. And that's where you have to be on watch. You got to be on guard. You got to be Anubis. You got to have full trust in the divine, in God, or whatever you call God. No doubt, no fear, no worry. To fully trust that you have a faith and knowingness that there is a higher power at play. So during that gestation period, your consciousness must maintain a certain level of conviction in order for transformation to occur. And what does maintain mean? To keep up, to carry it on, to continue to hold on to a certain state or condition, to keep in existence and to continue. And so you're supposed to maintain that feeling during this gestation period. That's what the law of gender is. Because the unseen is far more powerful than the seen. And we get so attached to what we can see. We really do. But what we see is only a small fraction of reality on the light spectrum. We can only our eyes aren't, they're not the best in terms of seeing everything on the spectrum. Like, we don't have access. And so we have to know that there is something greater at play here in the darkness, in the unknown. While I'm waiting, I can rest assured that there is a higher power at play, and it's going to do what it has to do. And when that time comes, whatever it is, I don't necessarily have to know or need to know, because every seed has its own gestation period. So I'm just going, my only job during this particular season is to maintain what it is that I'm feeling and what it is that I'm hoping for, but feeling and knowing that substance of the hope, that substance of the car, not to be in constant hope and begging. So these are the 7 Hermetic principles. Mentalism, understanding that your thoughts create your entire reality, that all is the mind. Vibration, our feelings shape our reality, empowering us to cultivate positivity and attract more abundance. Like attracts like. That's where they get the law of attraction from. Correspondence, we are always corresponding, polarity, rhythm, and cause and effect. So with understanding these 7 Hermetic principles, I'm now about to dive into the first 600 words of Genesis. Before I do, I want to specifically say that the Bible is written in parables and allegories. A parable is a fictitious story. Now, it is made up to illustrate a lesson that is easy to convey the message in a way that is relatable and easy to understand. Parables are not factual or historical accounts. They are crafted narratives designed to just illustrate a particular lesson, like the parable of Jesus or the parable of the prodigal son. They're used as teaching tools. They are used to allow the storyteller to focus on the lesson rather than the historical accuracy of the story. While on the other hand, an allegory, it may be based off of factual place or person, but it's more complex and extended. Like, it has multiple layers and meanings and woven throughout the entire narrative. When it comes to an allegory, the symbolism is just off the chain, and they have multiple dual and extended meanings, and they're intended to be thought-provoking to get you to think. Key characteristics of an allegory is that the symbolisms are off the chain, they have an extended meaning, and a dual narrative. Like, for example, we have an example of an allegory in classic literature like Animal Farm, written by George Orwell, where it's a political allegory where he used farm animals to represent figures and ideologies from Russia's revolution and the Soviet Union. This story really critiques totalitarianism and corruption. It's not actually about animals. And one of my favorite allegories is the Plato's allegory of the cave. It's a philosophical allegory about human perception, enlightenment, and the nature of reality. Because here you have where everybody is in the cave, right? But you have your what I like to call your social media frauds and imposters, and your fake gurus who are still in the cave with you, but they just figured out how to stand in their darkness, right? Because the darkness that they're in it's a limited space, right? They're still in darkness, but they're able to stand, and they have just something that they're holding that they could see that is depicting pictures on this cave, where the people that are not able to stand in their bullshit yet, right? They're still sitting in it, and they believe the shadows, they believe the past, the refraction of the light, but that's not actually what the object is. But in this situation, both of these people, both of the sides of the cave, they're both trapped. Nobody knows anything more than the other person. The only thing that the people that are holding the fake things up, the only thing that they're able to do is to stand in their shit. And when somebody had broke this analogy down to me, and it was just like, I was just like, wow, okay. But again, right, there weren't actually people in a cave. Here's another allegory, The Matrix. This is one of my favorites as well. It's exploring the themes of reality, freedom, and mind control. Allegories. Before we get into this, there are a couple of things that I want to go over because we're reviewing the Bible, and a lot of religious people tend to take the Bible literally. So I want to say, when it comes to the Bible and whatever you believe, whether you're Jewish, Christian, Muslim, the fact of the matter is that we are one people toward one goal, that is to make God manifest in us. And God is not going to be satisfied until we awaken from our slumber and allow the form of what God's to be expressed to be fully done, because that's how and why we were created. The Bible and the Old Testament specifically teaches us how to learn positioning. And any athlete knows that when it comes to positioning, you got to know your part in order to play the game. So let's go ahead and take a look at what it is when it comes to the Bible. The Old Testament teaches you how to learn the position and play the game properly. And then the game of life is all about positioning. Any player or athlete will tell you that. But unfortunately, most people don't have any notion of what their position is. Therefore, they end up spending most of their lives working and swimming against the grain, against the current, swimming upstream instead of going with the flow and the rhythm of God's energy. Genesis largely sets up how to play that position by going directly into the 7 Hermetic principles, which is the 7 movements of God. And whoever wrote the Bible, or the group of writers that wrote the Bible in the original language, know that it is very detailed and redundant, because that is how the mind works, by memory, by experience, and repetition. So we retain things in our memory by our declarative and our non-declarative system. There are a lot of redundancies in Genesis. I'm not going to focus on them as much. I'm going to pull the key takeaways from them and share. The first thing I also want to say is that I am not claiming to be everywhere and equally present. I have not met a human being that has been able to create a mountain, create water, or duplicate anything that God has been able to do. My arms are too short to box with God. But I do know that I am a child of God, that I am connected to the source and the same energy, just like a branch on a tree has access to all of the nutrients and the energy that the trunk of the tree actually has, because it is a part of the branch. It is a part of the tree. So I am the daughter of the Most High. I am an individualization of God in the spot that I occupy. I'm just a little branch on this side over here, and everybody else is playing their part in their individual spot that they are in. And we all have free will. We all have the atom of man and the outer man that was made by Jehovah, Jesus, God, whatever you want to call it. And so the Hebrew authors, they really attempted to explain God and man following the Babylonian captivity towards the end of the Hebrew history, which was over a 4,000-year period. And unlike other spiritualities and religions, the Hebrew religion and Christianity describe the Trinity, but they take out the feminine principle. But as you'll see when we get into Genesis, it wasn't taken out. This is just their interpretation of it. So they describe the Holy Trinity as one. We have Elohim God, where God is everywhere equally present. And then 2, Jehovah God, or what we call to be Jesus Christ, God's individualization in man, God manifested in the flesh. And then you have Adam, the intellectual man, with free will formed by Jehovah God or Jesus Christ, where Adam is a vehicle through which the expression of God on this plane. And remember, all things come through us, not to us. So Adam really represents the misuse of your intellect, and Eve represents the misuse of the undeveloped emotional nature that we have, and abusing it through our free will and falling away from God's will. And this can happen back then and it can happen now. It can continuously happen as long as you are not doing what you're supposed to do within the kingdom of your own mind. So the seven principles and the seven movements of God govern everything in the entire existence. This is the process of how God moves and how God moves in and through man. So if we take a look at this and understanding the Bible and that it is a basic instructions for life, that it is a manual of your mind, that is basically an unfoldment, a blossoming, if you will, right, of who you are and who you are going to be. So you have to relate yourself to every event named in the Bible and every character, like Shakespeare said, all the world is a stage. So you play every character, you play every role in these parables and allegories. And the part that a lot of people get hung up on is the rack, right? The rack is the spiritual, is the thing where the spiritual meat and the substance is actually hung on. So make sure that you focus on the meat and not the rack. Religious folks be focusing on the rack all the time and they be missing the point, the meat of it all. And also the other thing to understand when it comes to the Bible is that it was written in terms of man's unfoldment at the time of which each section was written. And so now that we're in the different century, right, we have to understand that that is their state of consciousness then. And so you can imagine we've unfolded tremendously since then. And this is why we have to take the meat and the basis of which the substance is saying rather than the literal interpretation, because the Bible is a review of the gradual involution and evolution of the spirit of God in man, with the whole let there be light and sparking the idea. It's the evolution of God in your consciousness and the gradual involvement of it into form, where we are going, journeying from darkness back into the light. So let's start off with Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, in the beginning that never began, basically, right? There is no beginning or ending to affinity. So the beginning basically means that it is the beginning of being on this particular plane, right? It's the beginning of you when you were born. And every day of your life really is a beginning. You're reset. You get a new 24 hours every day when you wake back into consciousness from leaving your slumber or your subconsciousness. And there is no beginning or ending to you because you did not begin at birth. The Bible tells you that we are created in God's likeness and image. And that means that we always were here, we always existed. We just were transformed into this beginning on this particular plane in this flesh suit body. Because God is the first causation of this whole process in mind, right? The universe itself is mental. So consciousness is the only thing that has anything, does anything, anything. God consciousness is the only power. It's always existed. And within that existence, God created the heaven and the earth, meaning that your inner world is an expression of your outer world. Verse 2, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. The Spirit of God moved upon the face, and face, if you look up the etymology of it and the meaning of it, basically means a vision or form, right? When you think about something, first you start to visualize the shape and the form of what it is before you can even put it into words. Have you ever wanted to express or say something that there were no words for? So this was upon the form of the waters and creating patterns for all things. And every thought has its own pattern and its own frequency and own nature and behavior, its own form and its own shape. Every thought carries a different emotion that we feel in our body. the face upon the waters. Well, we know that the waters means the subconscious, right? We're 70% water. The world is mostly water. And we're made in such a way that God can move directly upon your subconscious feeling nature. And then your subconscious mind will help materialize it into the physical. While spirit has no form of itself, just like water has no form of itself, it will come into the form according to the shape of your mind is, just as the water will take the shapes of its banks to fill its own level and the entire space, just like spirit is moving. So it's letting us know through the elements how spirit moves. And just like we all take the shape and the form of our emotions, right? If we're feeling a certain way, we tend to take on that particular behavior. Verse 3, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. This is the first action of God, the first outwardly action of God, where God is now speaking, using the power of the word, using the power of mentalism, saying, let there be light. Meaning, at this precise moment, you are letting the idea and the awareness originate from God come to you, because all divine ideas come from God. To only let light possess your intellect. And by doing that, you let God solve your problem and shine light on it. Verse 4, and God saw the light and saw that it was good, and God divided light from the darkness. Boom, polarity right here. Polarity, dividing the light from the darkness. That's the law of polarity. It can't get any more obvious than that. Verse 5, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning were the first day. A shift from light to darkness. This highlights a transition movement, actively outward seeking focus to an inward focus, symbolizing a shift from the outward action to thoughts and feelings, since it is at a time of ending from one phase and beginning of another phase. Something is happening in this process. This is a symbolism of darkness representing the fertile void space where possibilities emerge, where the realm of the subconscious and the unseen forces are at work shaping the future in our realities. This is God letting us know that there are things happening in the day and that there are things happening in the night. This is also letting us know that there's a rhythm, right? There's a law of rhythm that happens in this, within the cycles of moving a natural energy, where it's going from one phase to another. Verse 6, and God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters. From let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. To decipher this is to understand through its polar words and its polar phrases, and how we're going to decode this. The polar words here are firmament and waters. Let us see how they give meaning in the second movement, and understand that waters within the face upon the waters. And so that has a meaning right off from scratch, right? You understand that firmament means firm mind, to have the idea within your feelings become firm in your mind, and that you understand and you demonstrate those feelings because you let the idea become firm in your mentality. You have that firm certainty with you that it is going to work out, that the very capable and qualified, all-powerful God has the ability to let things become firm in your mind. Verse 7, and God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so. Again, key word here is from, meaning that you are from your subconscious. The waters that are within you are from the same waters that are above you, that are, whether you want to call it heaven, whether you want to call it a physical space and take on a literal interpretation, or if you understand that these are internal waters that exist within you, that also God moves through in, and as above, so below. Meaning, this particular law is understanding that everything that is within you must be expressed without you, because it is from the same source. Verse 8, and God called the firmament heaven, and the evening and the morning were the second day. Verse 9, and God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear, and it was so. Let the waters be gathered in one place. The polar words decipher things are, within this situation, are waters gathered in one place, meaning let your feelings now be firm and sure in their faith, and they have to be gathered in one place. This literally means you got to put all your eggs in one basket. You got to put all your feelings in one place and go all in, meaning that you don't let your feelings go to another place, that your consciousness must maintain a certain level of conviction in that place, and that you have to maintain that frequency for a period of time in order for transformation to occur. And when it does, dry land appear, and it will so, and it was so. This is law. This is letting you know that it's not a possibility, that it's actually something that happens within the movement, within the process of God. Verse 10, and then it goes on to say, and God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters called the seas, and God saw that it was good. And then it goes on to say to let the dry land appear. Dry land is the third polar key to dry land, obviously means the result and meaning it is working out, which was done for you. But receiving the idea now as dry land in your subconscious mind is that you have to let your mind be dry and ready to be nourished and conditioned by God. Like it's a blank. There's nothing else occupying that space, only by what God wants done there to appear to come into manifestation. Not with our cardinal mind where we kind of interfere and give things, right? And we understand that we're allowing that space to gather together and allow that earth to be good, and not talking ourselves out of it, right? And letting the waters and what God calls the seas, right, gathering together in that, not our cardinal mind waters, not additional ideas. And how do you know that it's a divine idea from God? Well, you know by the way that it feels. You know that it doesn't harm anyone, and you know that it came without effort or manipulation, right? It's something that you just receive as a gift. Verse 11, and God said, let the earth bring forth grass, thereby yielding seeds, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after its kind, whose seed is itself upon the earth, and it was so. Again, right, there's a lot of repetition and redundancy here, but we just know that every type of herb and seed will yield fruit after its kind. Every thought that you have will yield fruit after its kind. And in verse 12, and God brought forth grass. Let me go back to 12. And herb yielding after its kind, and the tree yielding fruit, and God saw that it was good. He's just letting us know that everything is yielding after its kind. It is so, it is good. And then in verse 13, which I didn't include here, but it says in the evening and the morning were the third day. So it's letting us know, again, rhythm, transition, cycling from one phase to another. And in verse 14, here's another point of repetition where we already know that there is lights in the firmament. In heaven, right? And there's a division, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of heaven, and divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons. The symbolism here is basically saying that some things can last for a short period of time within each cycle, and some things can last for days or for years. This is an explanation of the process that happens in your mind and your consciousness and connection with the Creator, that everything has its own purpose and its own timing, and it may be for different reasons and for different purposes. And you have to just understand that. Verse 15 through 18, in the fourth movement from God, where it says, let there be light in the firmament, and divide the day from the night, Genesis 1 through 14. understanding that the polar words in lights and firmament, but in 15 through 18, now you need added lights, right? So it's saying the greater lights in verse 16, these added lights will take your faith even greater. The two additional lights here are important to add to your faith. That is understanding and willingness. Willingness to let God's will be done, and that you're not interfering. You're not trying to come in the way and do it, that you're literally allowing things to happen in their own time, in their own season, in God's divine timing. Not in power or physical willingness, but in a spiritual willingness where you are actually keeping that firm understanding that it is working out and it's inevitable and it is going to be good. Verse 19 through 25 in the fifth movement, in the King James Version, it says, let the waters bring forth. In the Amplified Version, it says, swarm. With swarms and living creatures, and let the birds fly above the earth. Again, the polar words here are living creatures and birds in the waters. Every statement in the Bible has a surface meaning and a meaning of depth, meaning of how it pertains to your life in the now. The surface statement is that, yeah, there's many kinds of marine life and that's formed in the waters, but there are also many kinds of feelings in your waters within you, and there's swarms of different emotions and living creatures. More thoughts of that kind will eventually come to you. More thoughts from God will also eventually come to you, those divine ideas. And the birds fly above the earth. Earth is your express world. The birds with other key means somewhere else of the same thing, that you are now reaching a full understanding of the original idea, and God represents the bird's eye view, right? Thoughts are reaching a spiritual understanding above the earthly through to carry your mind upward toward the higher ground with spirit. That's the other polar key in this scripture, is that your expressed mental state, let your feeling waters swarm or bring forth with additional embellishment. Even now in the sixth step, it says, in the sixth movement from God, it says, let the earth bring forth after its kind, and earth is what your express world. So I'm going to pause for a second and take a moment before we go to the rest of this and give a quick summary, because I know I'm covering a lot of information. So the first step, the first movement from God, is to let the pure idea come to your mind. The second is that let it be firm in your feelings. Let there be a firmament in your feelings. And so now that you have this firm new faith mentally, you let this idea take shape in your imagination, and you see it working out in your favor for your imagination. You don't think about anything other than success, how that feels. You're walking in it, you're embodying in it, and you have a willingness and an understanding within your faith. That's additional lights that allow you to embellish upon the original idea and take it even further and deeper and expanding within your own imagination, within the faculty of your mind. Verses 24 through 26. The sixth movement from God in verse 25 says, let the earth bring forth living creatures after his kind. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Us and our. It's plural, right? We understand in terms of the 7 Hermetic principles in the law of gender that it's describing energy. There's a masculine and feminine element within creation. Man is a polar word now, made in our likeness and image. In this process, you are now knowing that you are not only made in God's imagination of mind, but you also possess God's likeness, meaning God's moods, God's attitudes, God's behaviors, God's emotions, how God moves in and through you, because God wanted to have the experience. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. And in this scripture, when it talks about dominion over, this is just dominion over the lower aspects and your emotions. It doesn't mean to dominate and control something else or someone else. This is all a story that is happening within. So you are given the power and the dominion to rule over the lower aspects of your emotions and your nature. Verse 27. Ada represents the misuse of your intellectual and Eve represents the misuse of your emotions. So God created likeness, man in his own likeness and image, and God created male and female, and he created them. So we understand that God created the law of gender. 28 through 30, it keeps basically saying the same thing. I know I said I wasn't going over redundancies, but it's basically saying the waters brought forth abundantly after their kind, and the earth bring forth living creatures after its kind. What it is saying in both situations is that the seed or idea, which is the species that it was created for by the cause, in the waters of your subconscious mind, and then on land, meaning that each thing is always going to create and mirror that energy, and is going to reproduce the same effects. You are the cause and the effect of all that you see in the world, right? You plant an apple seed, you're going to get an apple tree. It's after its kind. You will know them by their fruits. You will know who people are without them even saying, by how they're living their life, what's happening in their life, in their express world, not by what they say, by what is being produced. Genesis chapter 2, the first 2 verses are really a part of chapter 1, because it's letting us know what happens on the 7th day after creation and completion. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all of the hosts in them. And on the 7th day, he ended his work. God ended his work, which he had made, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had made. And this is the final requirement when we talk about the 7 Hermetic principles and the 7 movements of God, which is basically the law of gender, which is rest, to rest from all of your works. When it comes to this, do not underestimate the power of rest. This is you already doing everything that you could have fully done on your part, and that you are patiently waiting within this final step. That you are resting assured that it is already done, and you're preparing for the arrival of what it is that you're wanting to receive. You have demonstrated everything boldly, knowing that you have infinite resources behind you, because God is operating, and God is operating in spirit, in, through, and for you. So you rest and let God do the rest. And God rested on the 7th day from all his work. And there's 3 final requirements. The first word is rested. The other polar key from all his works. Let me put it to you this way. When it comes to a particular last part of Genesis, and do not underestimate this part. This is you fully doing your part and patiently waiting. This is the 7th final step. This is the law of gender. It doesn't mean anything other than being rest and being ready for the arrival. So think about what a mother does when she's about to birth a baby, right? She's getting the nursery ready. She's buying the clothes. She's getting ready for the arrival. So oftentimes we ask for something, we don't trust and believe that it is going through its gestation period, and we're not even getting ready for it. We're not even like preparing ourselves to receive it, to allow our hands to be open to hold it. You might be holding on to something else, and God is like, well, I've been trying to give you this thing, but you are holding on to something else. Like, you haven't prepared yourself to even receive it. And so after you've done everything that you possibly can do in your physical nature, you are supposed to rest in that divine idea and let God do God's part. And this is the first 600 words, Genesis. This is the 7 Hermetic principles. The Bible is a basic instructions for life. It's a manual for your mind. And I'm just excited that I can understand how God moves in and through me, and to share my over and understanding, to inspire, to encourage, to be in community and fellowship with you all. So I hope y'all got this message. Till next time. I think next time I'm gonna break down I think I'm gonna go into the story of Abraham and Sarah. And also, you know, my given name is Sarah, so I didn't fully appreciate this story until I broke it down metaphysically, in terms of, so Abraham actually was a real character, but the story of them was an allegory, right? And what happened in terms of the meat of the takeaway, and what happens when your emotions aren't fully developed, and you have a love for material wealth. So I think my next video is going to be on Abraham and Sarah, and we can go into Adam and Eve. I think I went a little bit into Adam and Eve in this, but we'll probably fully go into it next time. So make sure you are sharing this video, like, subscribe. Till next time, y'all. Peace and be well.